It's so great to see David Dastmalchian as the lead in this movie. You may not be familiar with his name, but you've definitely seen him pop up in numerous movies and TV shows for the last 15 years, nearly 20 years at this point. Whether it be The Dark Knight or Dune, Oppenheimer, The Suicide Squad. Hell, he used to do those Wendy's commercials back in the day.
How can you make Wendy's crispy chicken nuggets even better?
You can't.
Correct.
So I'll be the first to tell you, we haven't exactly gotten that many great theatrical releases in the horror genre so far in 2024.
You don't say!
While the prehistoric survival horror film Out of Darkness is certainly an exception, I ended up really liking that movie, one of my favorites of the year so far. We've gotten a lot of bullshit, like the Haunted Pool movie, Night Swim, and most recently another Jeff Wadlow stinker with Imaginary, the same guy that also gave us films like Fantasy Island and Truth or Dare.
Truth or dare?
Creepy and sexy. Let's do it.
Just oof, really rough movies. And while I've been extremely excited for horror films like Robert Eggers' Nosferatu coming later this year, I've also been eagerly anticipating Late Night with the Devil, a film presenting itself as a documentary-esque investigation about a late-night show gone awry due to a supernatural forces, with David Dastmalchian in the leading role. You know, it looked like a much-needed palate cleanser after just a month filled with big blockbuster films, some of which I found to be rather disappointing. But, you know, before getting into the film itself, I do want to give you guys a bit of a synopsis before we dive into the nitty-gritty details of the film. A late-night talk show host, hoping to make his show more successful, organizes a special occult-themed episode on a Halloween night in 1977. But the television broadcast goes horribly wrong, and an evil is unleashed into the nation's living rooms. First of all, I just want to start off by saying it's so great to see David Dastmalchian as the lead in this movie. You may not be familiar with his name, but you've definitely seen him pop up in numerous movies and TV shows for the last 15 years, nearly 20 years at this point. Whether it be The Dark Knight or Dune, Oppenheimer, The Suicide Squad. Hell, he used to do those Wendy's commercials back in the day.
How can you make Wendy's crispy chicken nuggets even better?
You can't.
Correct.
You've seen him quite a few times, and he's consistently good in everything he's in. But it's just so nice to finally have him be the main focus, the leading man in something, instead of playing a supporting character or even, you know, a tertiary character. You know, in this particular film, he plays the character of Jack Delroy, a late-night host who has gone through a number of recent struggles and tragedies, including the passing of his wife, and he's just trying to boost his numbers, his ratings, to prove he's just as good, if not better, than those other late-night hosts of the era. Dastmalchian is such an expressive actor. And he has features that make him stand out from most, particularly those eyes of his, those peepers, those dark black eyes.
The blackest eyes. The devil's eyes.
Which are so just big and emotive. He's got that late night persona of a Johnny Carson or an Ed Sullivan down, just easily. But on top of that, he has all these like personal issues, especially in regards to his wife's death, that just bubble up to the surface throughout the movie. And that complements the rest of the film's horror aesthetics and tone so well, but it just adds so much to his performance. You know, the 70s era talk show format and look is very well represented here in this movie. The color palette is very much brown and burnt orange, as it should be. It's not great to look at, but that's the way it looked back in the day. That's how it was. But the film also has those just obvious trademarks of a talk show or late show, you know, the opening monologue, you know, the banter with the co-host or the assistant, you know, the little offhand improvised jokes, even some of that like awkwardness when talking to a guest that the host probably only interacted with like one time, you know, beforehand. That showbiz TV cheese, if you will, is on full display, and it's intentional. And all that is just represented, I think for the most part, with that 1970s TV filter just layered on top of all those little artifacts and things like popping up and stuff. It makes you feel like you're watching a broadcast from that decade. And you do have these like other scenes that are like black and white, that are like not a part of the show, of the broadcast, where Dels Malchian and the rest of the cast like interact with each other as well. And they're a little more intimate and have a much more serious vibe to them. They're talking in hush whispers and things. You know, there's definitely some silliness in the movie, with a number of the effects looking a bit strange, you know, and this is like mostly before the film's final act. Now this is a much lower budgeted movie, and I think it's done on purpose because they want to just steadily build to that final third and the ending where it really shifts gears and becomes very violent and very weird and thankfully, in my opinion, incredibly satisfying. You know, we have this buildup of supernatural moments happening throughout the film, many of them originating from this girl named Lily, played by Ingrid Torelli, you know, who claims she is possessed by this demonic entity she has named Mr. Wriggles because he wriggles inside of her and makes her body do all sorts of naughty things. And while there are, you know, a number of disturbing moments like layered in the film's first two acts, right? It's the third act. It's the final third where everything goes completely crazy. And more is revealed about our characters and their respective histories, particularly when it comes to Dels Malchian's Delroy. And for me, it was one of the best and most satisfying endings for a horror film in quite some time. The rest of the cast and the studio audience, I think, do a great job, a very good job as well. You know, you have Laura Gordon, who plays Dr. June, who is a parapsychologist who often interacts with Torelli and her demonic entity. But she just has excellent chemistry with Dels Malchian as well. Additionally, I also really liked Ian Bliss as Carmichael, who's this former magician, now turned a complete skeptic, and Risa Terry as Jack's sidekick, Gus, in the movie. Their reactions to just all the crazy supernatural bullshit going on is great. And I love Gus in particular because he's just freaking out the most about all this stuff. It's like how I think we would all react as well. I thought him he's kind of like he's kind of like Conan O'Brien's buddy, his co-host, Andy Richter. He kind of had that Andy Richter energy, which I like, except what if Andy Richter was in a horror film? That's what it was. Now, in terms of criticisms, you may or may not be aware of the controversy with the movie using AI-generated art for several title cards that pop up throughout the film in certain places. While they're not constantly featured, it is disappointing that the filmmakers didn't just get an artist, didn't just commission an artist to design them. Maybe I'm speaking from a point of ignorance, but I don't think that's exactly expensive. I don't think that's like a major cost, but I don't know. I could be wrong for all I know, so please feel free to correct me. But again, At least we don't see some human hand abomination on screen. I am thankful for that.
Holy fucking shit.
But when it comes down to it, the filmmaking duo, I should have mentioned them at the top. I don't know if they previously worked on anything before, but the filmmaking duo of Colin and Cameron Cairns, I think that's how you say their name, they have made just a fresh and original horror tale with a unique aesthetic we don't often see, a really interesting premise that I don't think I've ever seen before, featuring a strong supporting cast and the best performance of David Dastmalchian's entire career, which is saying something because in all of his supporting and tertiary roles, he's always consistently good. But he is very much a leading man material. And I'm so glad that these guys and these filmmakers, used him in this way, because now I like to see David Dastmalchian carry more movies in the future or TV shows and things, because not that I ever thought he couldn't do it, but now it's like, here's the proof right now, and he can absolutely do it, and he nails it completely. And there's a lot of surprises involving his character too. I couldn't highly recommend it more. And I encourage all of you guys, I encourage people to check it out when you have the time, especially if you want a palate cleanser. After some of these, disappointing blockbusters, and especially some of these disappointing horror films, I can safely say, this horror film is much better than Night Swim, much better than Imaginary. And even though I liked the movie, even though I really enjoyed Out of Darkness, and it's one of my favorites so far this year, if I were to put together a top 10 list, it would be in there. I also think this film is even better than Out of Darkness. Very different movies, very different sensibilities and things. But in terms of the story they were telling, in terms of the performances, and just that third act and that ending, I was just blown away by it. I really, really liked it a lot. But what about you guys? Has anyone heard of this movie? I know it has a relatively smaller release compared to a lot of films out there right now. For those of you who have seen it, did you like it as much as I did? Did you not care for it? Were there some stuff that just didn't work for you? I mean, as always, please let me know. And what do you think of David Dastmalchian as well? Would you like to, obviously, I think everyone likes the guy. Usually anytime he pops up in something, even if the film or the TV show itself isn't that great, he's usually consistently amazing. So do you want to see him in more stuff as a leading man? Let me know.
5 minutes later.
I described it as looking like it reeked of cigarette smoke. Oh, that's a great description. Yeah, definitely. Great description of a Bishop Sycamore. No question about it. That's why everything's fucking brown in the 70s. That's why the carpets are brown, the walls are brown, because you can't have all these white walls because people are constantly smoking. You'll see all that. It'll yell everything over. That's why they have things that are burnt orange. So true. It was to mask just the cigarette smoke that seeped into the walls, into the foundations.